A D.C. crime crackdown, trade deals, peace summits, and redistricting battles as Trump 2.0 continues on its breakneck pace. And let me tell you, it is breakneck. Joining me now is the founder of the bipartisan government relations firm, Mehlman Consulting, and author of the Age of Distribution Substack. And his name is Bruce Mehlman. He's been here before. It's great to have you back. I want to commend everybody to sign up for the Age of Disruption Substack by Bruce. I get it every Sunday. It's one of the best things that I read.
And it's free.
And it's free for now or forever.
Who knows? But it's free for the foreseeable future.
All right. So this is Perino on Politics. It's where I call it my smart friends. I'll find out what's on their minds about the state of American politics. And Bruce, if I could start with asking you about the news of the day, which, you know, this is a weekly podcast, but I do think this story that we're going to talk about, and actually probably all the other ones, will be the stories of the week. And that is that as we speak, President Trump is in the White House briefing room talking about something that has long been sort of suggested, banted about, threatened even, but now apparently it's happening, that there will be this takeover of D.C. by the federal government to try to get the crime situation under control. He also talked about the beautification of the city, utilizing all parts of the federal government. He was there with the Attorney General, the D.C. U.S. Attorney, who is my former colleague, Jeanine Pirro. You had the Department of Defense there, Department of Interior. There's a lot happening all at once in D.C., and you're a longtime D.C. resident. I lived there for 15 years total, and I can see why some people would really want this, and I can also understand that it's kind of very complicated.
Yeah, look, I don't recall Donald Trump's percentage of the vote in D.C. I would suspect it may be the worst in the nation in terms of places with electoral college votes, and yet I bet there's overwhelming support for at least why he's trying to deal with things. It's
right.
Our nation's capital. I always found it embarrassing that, you know, I may visit foreign capitals and you feel totally safe on the street almost anywhere at almost any hour. And even here in D.C., you're walking back from the White House to your garage at 13th Street, you know, a couple of blocks away, and your head's on a swivel. D.C.'s had a crime problem. It's been going down over the last couple of years, but it's hardly under control. This fits, Dana, a little bit into the thing that I've observed in the first 200 days. So many of the, like I call it the why versus the how. So many of the things Donald Trump aims at, so many of the problems he identifies, has more than 50% of the country agreeing with what he's trying to do, why, and it's often the how where he loses support.
Right, and it's interesting because that you just said that you think that there's probably a lot of people that maybe even privately would support it. I've become friendly with a really lovely person, Yemisi Egbobole, and she worked in the Biden administration. I highly recommend her Fox opinion piece that just posted this morning. It's called, the headline is D.C. Democrats Risk Losing Public Trust by Dodging Youth Crime Crisis Trump is Addressing. And I think that her being willing to write a piece like that, to go on a place where you can get a lot of views. We don't just have Republicans that go at foxnews.com. It's one of the largest audiences that you can get. So to go on there and say that Democrats don't pass up this opportunity to get things right. And especially, Bruce, the truancy problems in D.C. got really bad over COVID. And as I understand it, have never really improved.
Yeah, it's whether it's carjacking or thankfully murder has come back down to near pre-COVID levels. But truancy's bad, homelessness is bad, and for a variety of reasons, often, you know, sincere motivation. People have treated a lot of these challenges with kid gloves. And I think as your city, New York, has shown, as San Francisco failed to show, but the last person to run for mayor perhaps has figured out, the broken windows challenge is a real one. And if you don't take truancy or homelessness or petty crime seriously, it creates a climate of fear. And for that matter, progressives who are understandably worried about marginalized communities, the climate of fear is worst for communities of color. The crime situation, it may be bad for somebody like me, but I'm hopping into my Volvo and heading to the suburbs. Right. And it's the people who live in the city whose businesses get burned out when there are riots. Right. And so there's going to be overwhelming support for reducing crime. It will be the how he goes about it that, judging by the first 200 days, will probably lose some folks who are happy he's addressing a problem they agree with, but don't like how he maybe goes about doing it.
Yeah, and during America's Newsroom today, it occurred to me that President Trump in the first term offered to help Chicago's Mayor Lori Lightfoot with the crime problem. And she said, no, I don't want your help, right? San Francisco, I think he offered there too. Thinking even back to the Bush administration with President Bush at the time, offering help to the mayor of New Orleans before the hurricane, who didn't want the help, and the governor didn't want the help, and there is documented evidence that said that they didn't want it to look like a Republican president had to help them. And I wonder if people are just getting tired enough of all of these problems in their cities or even in rural America, feeling like nothing is getting changed. You have a president who's willing to help. You can take them up on it. Now, one of the things the Democrats are doing, Bruce, is I call it killing everyone with statistics. And they'll just say, but crime is down, crime is down, crime is down. I'm like, but is it? Like, even in New York City, you could say crime is down, but you walk down the street, the homeless problem is still severe. The trash problem is severe. The fact that, where I go and take a lesson every week, a little exercise lesson on 37th Street, there's a methadone clinic. Oh my gosh, it's like the zombie apocalypse. And so there's the quality of life issues. And you're right, I'm the same. I can take a car there. I don't have to walk there. I have to walk through all of it and see it. I love to walk, so I do. But it's this quality of life issue that you cannot necessarily quantify just by saying statistics. That will drive people nuts.
You're right, and you and I have been around long enough and both know it's not just a Democrat, Republican, one-directional problem. I mean, I recall then Governor Chris Christie taking a lot of heat with Hurricane Sandy, because he welcomed President Obama and FEMA, who did a great job. New York got trashed even more.
New Jersey too.
But and the famous pictures of Christie giving a bear hug to Obama. President Obama handled that natural disaster extremely well. Yep. It was fortuitous, its timing, but it absolutely gave him a tailwind heading into the 2012 elections, where it was clear this guy is on his game, he's on his job, he's doing what he's supposed to. People have and continue to hold that against Chris Christie. We've seen some of the hate from red states or red districts towards FEMA. I mean, it's the federal emergency people. It's the same FEMA under Bush that Democrats didn't want, that under Biden, Republicans are suggesting is maybe wrong and is maybe broken. You're right. Democrats like to cite statistics. There are debates about exactly how comprehensive the data are, although I tend to believe that over time the federal government's really good at collecting data, and I'm worried about recent efforts to potentially kind of take out the baby with the bathwater and blow up statistic agencies because we don't like some of their short-term findings. But look, at the end of the day, partisans are always looking for reasons to blame the other side, to claim a problem either isn't really a problem or is twice as bad as we think it is. And over, the reality is right down the middle of the fairway. The Republicans get some of it right and the Democrats get other parts of it right. Yeah.
Well, on a high note, I would say that Jeanine Pirro, who I worked with for many years here at Fox, has developed a very good working relationship with the mayor and the police chief there in Washington, D.C. So at least at that level, there is cooperation, and we'll see if they can achieve something. The other story that's continuing this week is the Texas Democrats are still out of town. They fled so they wouldn't have to take a vote on gerrymandering. And over the weekend on Sunday in your Substack, you talked about gerrymandering a bit. You talked about artificial intelligence. And that occurred to me last week. Like, what would it look like if we just asked AI to look at our country, look at the population, and come up with congressional districts in a way that would be a truly nonpartisan look at it all? I don't even know if that's possible, but you touched on it a little bit in your Substack, and I'm wondering if you could explain that to people here.
Well, you bet. Look, first, sure, you could have an AI system draw districts, but you'd have to give them the desired criterion. And, there are some folks who would say, well, we want criterion. Every human politician says, I want a district that I can win without trying. Texas Republicans, one of the reasons there are 5 potentially gettable seats is because the humans, when they were doing the redistricting, said, don't give me a district that's only a plus 10, give me a plus 20, and then I don't have to worry about it.
Right.
If you only give me a plus 10, maybe I'm going to have to work a little bit harder. But by getting the plus 20s, that meant the Democrats had more districts than they might have gotten if you were willing to let your seat be a little bit riskier. So you don't even need an AI. The difference is that AI wasn't worried about their personal seat. The AI, if you told it the goal was to maximize one party or the other's advantages, it could draw that. Other people would say, no, we want to make sure that there are majority minority districts. You could program it for that. The challenge with all of this stuff is that AI doesn't have a rooting interest. It's fundamentally amoral. It does what you ask it to do. And humans have to put their own preferences in. So recall, Google came out with a Gemini, and it suggested, that there were African Vikings, and, its goal of trying to be more diverse, which is a worthwhile notional goal, led to factual mistakes. Founding fathers were African American women, and the Pope was. They went through all of Asian. I mean, they went through all of these things that never happened because they wanted it. In the same way that Elon Musk programmed his Grok 3 to be like anti-political correct, it called itself Mecha Hitler, which I'm suggesting is bad for an AI to kind of take on a rooting personality. So we'll see. AI is a tool that would allow a level of gerrymandering that's, it's a weapon of mass division. It is a superpower if you want to have hardcore gerrymandering in terms of it's ultimately a data exercise, but you also have to decide what's your goal. Is your goal districts that are slam dunks? Is your goal districts? You could say I want to maximize districts that are as competitive as possible.
Right.
Maybe we want to say make them as bipartisan. Although if I'm in a third party, I'd say, well, that, how about us? We've seen in California and elsewhere they try to have judges draw them. The last other thing we know about redistricting is no matter what you use, people still tend to live near people who are ideologically similarly minded. So urban areas, no matter how you slice and dice them, are overwhelmingly progressive. Rural areas, no matter how you slice them and dice them, are typically very red. They call that self-sorting, and it would take really weird level of gerrymandering effort to try to say, let me start in the city and let me kind of make a thin wedge all the way out to try to make a more balanced district, as opposed to let me put people who live near each other in the same district.
All right, so maybe that's not a great idea. I'm just looking, but I love the idea of more competitive districts. When Bill Hemmer goes to the board on election night, it would be great if he said, okay, we're watching 64 seats tonight. Instead, in the last few years, it's been 25 seats, 28 seats, and that's what determines the balance of power in the House. And
AI, weirdly, may fix that, because if you're going for more seats that you can win, it usually means more seats that you can lose at the same time. It's competitive seats. So weirdly, turning those Republican plus 20s into Republican plus 10s and 8s makes them a bit more vulnerable in an extreme wave. So their extreme gerrymandering may help them this time. It may not help them this time, but it also may make the seats a little bit more gettable if and when there were ever a really big wave. I'm with you. I would love a more competitive environment. Honestly, if you really want to get there, I believe you need to rethink not only how are districts drawn, but how many districts are there? In the United States, when the 13 colonies, when we started, we had however many districts, and they kept growing and growing as the population grew, because we wanted these to be literal representatives until about 1911, and then they said, done. Might have been 1913. We're done. We're never going to, from now on, it's 435, and we're sticking with that number, baby. And, suddenly you're like the mayor of a city as opposed to a representative of a smaller, more discrete group. That's what you do if you actually want to fix the system. Likewise, you change how you run primary elections, but people like the way things are, and everybody's afraid of a reform because you don't know who it would benefit, and don't, first do no harm. So interesting to think about, and you can learn a lot more about all of this on the Age of Disruption Substack, and that was from yesterday morning, Sunday, August 10th. Let me ask you one more question in this block. When it comes to gerrymandering, a lot of people are just thinking about 2026. Okay, that's the midterms. Is it too early for people to start thinking about 2028? I noticed, and I know with a lot of reporters, it's sort of
inevitable, and they can't help themselves. They want to ask J.D. Vance, are you going to be the nominee in 2028? And he's been very disciplined and pushed it off. Rubio's done the same. But that doesn't mean that reporters aren't trying to find, like, where's the next step for the Republican Party? And also, of course, we have the Democrats. I would say that some of them involved in the gerrymandering discussion last week, like Governor Newsom and Governor Pritzker, they have eyes on the prize for 2028. Kamala Harris said she's not going to run for governor. People think she might run for president. I think she'll never run for anything again. I could be wrong. We'll see. But do you think it is too soon to think about the 2028 election, or is now about the right time?
Well, you know me, Dana. A couple of weeks ago in the Sunday Substack, the title was 2028, and I dove into the question. It's going to be an unbelievably fascinating election year. I sure hope you and I keep our health and keep our jobs.
I hope we keep our jobs, because I want to cover a competitive primary on both sides.
And it's going to be really super interesting. We saw it in 2008. We saw it in 2016, although it was a little cooked for Hillary in 2016. On the Dem side, they've got to decide, should it be 1992 or 1972?
Okay.
Recall after 1968, when a sitting president dropped out in an election year, handed it off to his vice president, who never had any daylight on the most controversial issue, then it was Vietnam. The Dems get spanked. The next year, they decide we need to be more progressive. We need to lean in. They do George McGovern, and Nixon crushed them. More than 400 electoral college votes getting reelected. Fast forward, after losing to Reagan once, Reagan twice, and Reagan's VP, George H.W. Bush, the third time, in 92, Democrats are like, we need to actually be a party that is perceived by the middle of the country as sane. And they went right. They picked Bill Clinton, and with a giant assist from H. Ross Perot at 18.9% of the vote, Bill Clinton picks up the election, and the Democratic Party moves to the center. They are facing the same question. Are they going to go in an AOC, Mamdani direction? Because that's where the energy is in the party. It's clearly that's where the energy is. Or are they going to go in a Andy Bashir or maybe a Josh Shapiro? Or are they going to say the country doesn't want a progressive socialist. The country wants a moderate, centrist.
Like a pragmatic governor.
A pragmatic governor for all of the country. That's the question with the Democrats. For the Republicans, it's going to be one of three lanes, I think. First, if Trump retains his the MAGA ecosystem, his command of the party, he's going to basically decide. I assume he would go to his, either his sitting vice president or his Secretary of State, J.D. Vance, who I think is the pole position, or Marco Rubio, as the inheritors of Trump 2.0 or whatever it is, 3.0. Maybe he tries to get Don Jr. as the VP nominee on the ballot, but that's if he continues to just completely dominate a very subservient Republican Party. Lane 2 is a Trump light, where the candidates are all running to say we're going to improve and extend, sort of post-Reagan. You'd have a Vance and you'd have a Rubio, but you might have a Tom Cotton. You might have a Ted Cruz. You'll have others who will agree that Trump was right about a whole lot of stuff and will be looking to make modest and minor improvements.
Yeah, that maybe try to address the how that you brought up a moment ago.
Right. But generally not critical, not looking to pick a fight, because Trump, if he's alive, will be around going after anybody who challenges him. And door number 3 would be a bit of a new direction types, the Chris Sununu, the Nikki Haley. That would, if the economy is faltering under the Trump 2.0 administration in year 3 and year 4, if we get crushed in the midterms, which doesn't look like it's happening, if there were the stagflation scenario that Wall Street told us the tariffs would get, hasn't happened yet, but maybe it will. Then you'll be having folks who will say Trump got plenty right, but he got plenty wrong, and and they will be looking to make some distance from the current administration. It's too soon to tell which of those lanes will be favored by the winds. We'll have to wait till 2027.
So the other thing that I want to commend Bruce for, and suggest everybody follow the Age of Disruption Substack, is your ability to understand how both countries and companies are navigating Trump 2.0. And right now, we are dealing with many countries who are trying to figure out the tariff situation with the current administration. And you could get whiplash, because one day you'll read a story about how great the relationship is between America and India, for example, or America and Japan. I didn't know we had problems with Switzerland, but apparently we do. All of a sudden, you're a diplomat from one of those countries, and you wake up and think, oh, wait, now we have a huge problem. And there's lots of different reasons for all of these machinations. Sometimes there's a different reason every day for tariffs. If you are a country or a company trying to figure this out, what's the best way to have a steady course?
All of our corporate clients ask us all the time, and it's amazing how many lunches at embassies you get invited to by people looking to pick your brain on this. I think
How's the food?
Disappointing. You tend to think it's like you would think the Italian embassy would have the best pizza you ever had. It was fine.
It was fine.
Andy's pizza is way better, and I'll never get invited to the Italian embassy again. So whether you're a company or whether you're a country, it seems a couple of things. First, own the relationship at the highest level. A really good example of that, Tim Cook at Apple. Another really good example of that, the president of Mexico. She talks to President Trump at least once a week. It's got to be at the highest level. Number two, find a way to align your priorities with their priorities. When President Obama was in the White House, companies would go in and I would say, lead with your sustainability commitments, things you're already doing for business reasons. Or in the Biden case in 2021, 2022, it was more to lead with whatever you're doing on diversity and inclusion. You're already doing it for attracting and retaining employees, but lead with it, rhetorically aligned. In the same way, Mexico's success, not least, is because they say, we know you have a fentanyl problem and you have a border problem and we can help and we will help. So countries that align and companies that align do better than those who are, I'm your equal. Number three, be ready to negotiate. Famously, MBS from Saudi Arabia said, we're going to invest $500 billion in the country. And Trump's response is, why not $1 trillion? It doesn't matter how much you have, so have a negotiation strategy.
That happened to the SoftBank CEO, too.
Yeah, don't show up with your final best offer because you're going to be asked to negotiate. It's to be expected, so just
and you'll
play
be asked to do it in front of the cameras.
It will happen in front of the cameras a lot of the time. So next is mind your words. You saw with President Zelensky, he felt wronged and he decided to defend himself on TV in the Oval. You should have your principles and your values and stand up for your people, but if you do it in a performative way, you're going to lose in front of the cameras against one of the great performers in his house, literally. So private, not public, keep it substantive, not personal, keep it economic, not cultural, in terms of what you say and how you say it. Don't let your employee groups dictate. It's a little harder if you're a country because you've got nationalist concerns, but recognize there'll be, whether it's on the left or on the right, in your company or in your country, a lot of folks who are trying to push you to pick fights and pick battles that are their battles, but they shouldn't be your battles. Play the long game. We urge everybody, stay bipartisan. And I know, D's come and D's go, and R's come and R's go. Don't do anything that you wouldn't want to read about in the Washington Post test. Even if right now it feels like that nobody's going after certain things that historically would have been a scandal, assume the pendulum swings back. Finally, we tell certainly companies, and I think this is true for a lot of countries too, collaborate and coordinate. There's safety in number and wisdom in crowds. You don't need to be, you saw with Disney and DeSantis. The Disney company under the CEO who followed Iger and preceded Iger, because he didn't last very long and Iger came back, but originally tried to stay out of the whole Texas or Florida education law, should have just signed a group letter that would have stated there, we are with the rest of the business community. It would have been a safe place to be. He tried to not be involved in it at all. That led to the creative community within Disney upset that why is Disney, of all companies, not involved? And then he overreacted and went out on his own, tried to go head-to-head against DeSantis to die on a hill with a law that had 70% approval. You have a business to run. You are not an NGO. You're not a political party. Pick and choose your fights carefully and don't make everything into a big fight or expect to have the results that political parties have.
I just want to ask you one specific on this before we take a quick break, and that is about Canada. Because Mark Carney is a new leader there. He is on, I would say, center-left, I guess, based on what I can tell. Businessman. Understands the world of finance and global commerce, and they just keep stepping on a rake. And I want to get along with Canada, and I know the Canadians are very upset. So it's interesting to me to hear you say that you have to play the long game. I think Mark Carney is trying to do that, but at the same time, he's got constituencies that are very upset and pulling him in lots of different directions all at the same time.
Yeah, look, I agree with you. I thought Carney has made all of the moves that I would presume are the right moves so far. There may be to some degree. I mean, Canada is in a lot of ways, our best friend. It's the longest unpatrolled border, or non-militarized border. We kind of take them for granted, and they resent the fact that we think of them as sort of the kid brother when they think of us as sort of their equal. And I think Americans like Canada immensely, but we kind of take them for granted because they are our kid brother in our minds, given size and scale. Carney ran. And he ran with his mantra when he ran was build, baby, build. He said that's what they were going to do. He got rid of their carbon tax. He said, I'm going to cut down on immigration, and I'm going to spend a ton more on military. All priorities of Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. So I presume that Trump would take the win.
Right.
It appears, as always, he likes to use the phrase, who's got the cards, that he thinks he can get even more. Mm-hmm. The Canadians understandably have a lot of pride. They have a great nation, and it's been our steadfast ally in everything from World War II to the Gulf War. So they don't like being treated poorly. They got better hockey players. That's kind of about it in the sports as far as I'm concerned. But they will. I think they will be just fine. They're going to, as is happening everywhere, they're all going to give more than they think they're supposed to give. But at the end of the day, the U.S. has the cards. We've got the economy everybody wants access to. The World Bank makes it clear that we have fewer barriers to get into us than other countries have to get into them. All the West outsourced their defense to us, so they're dependent on us. Normally an American president wouldn't be quite so blunt in exercising all of the leverage. Trump uses all the leverage.
That's right. Well, we can also be grateful that we were born in America. We won life's great lottery on that one.
We did.
What am I missing? What do you pay attention to? Obviously, your brain is always turning, and I wonder, at what point in the week do you know the topic of the Age of Disruption for Sunday?
I've got a list of like 8 that I'm working on at any given time. I try not. I'm never going to compete with the brilliant people at Fox and the Journal and elsewhere on actually covering news. So I do try to. I love it when you can analogize between today and historical moments to help bring a little bit more perspective, for example. So I've got a whole bunch of notional ideas going. That book I always wanted to write. Maybe I'll get a chapter or 2 knocked out. It depends. There's one when I knew this is your. I love the podcast, so I knew this is your 3rd segment. And there are 2 Substacks in waiting. One I'm going to call No Regrets, that'll look into what do people regret later in life. And it's at all ages, it's kind of the same. We wish we were in better shape and healthier and ate better. We exercised more. We wish we had saved more money. We wish we had kept in better touch with friends and family. And it's very Arthur Brooksian, kind of going into those, what are some thoughts about how do you get in front of these trends so you're less likely to regret them. But the other one I want to call Wonder. With all due respect to your important profession, you guys need people to watch. You need people to click. And the old phrase, if it bleeds, it leads. Controversy is more interesting than kind of good, hopeful news, a breakthrough in a lab that is 10 years away from actually meaning anything. But I want to do one called Wonder. And it fits August. Here are just a couple of headlines that I'm working through. New research shows gene therapy can restore hearings in toddlers and young adults born with a genetic condition that makes them basically deaf. Shingles vaccine could lower the risk of dementia by 20%. Replenishing the brain's natural stores of lithium can protect against and maybe even reverse Alzheimer, according to a paper just published last week in Nature. Researchers in Stanford have developed technology for moving RNA to specific locations within a neuron where it can repair and regrow parts of cells, which will be unbelievable for people with traumatic injuries, for example. There's stuff on how CRISPR is helping people cure cancers. Things that our parents would have died from, Dana, you and I and my children shouldn't die from, God willing. Yeah. It's so easy. We may all be slaves to the machines by then. Maybe it'll be a president who's an AI president by then, although, maybe they'll be better. Who knows? But there is so much extraordinary good news and promising science enabled by the intersection of big data and genetics and having the time and the resources that are being put into research. 30 years from now, we're going to look back with wonder at some amazing things that have happened in this world, ways in which our lives and the world is so much better off. And we won't have forgotten that it felt so fraught in the 2020s.
Yeah.
But boy, will the world be a better place.
I love that. And I know that you are a subscriber to John Ellis's news items, and this is where you can find a lot of that content. And I love
every
that
day.
too.
I steal them from John. He is so good.
He credits you too. So it's mutually reinforcing. I'm going to end with one recommendation. I read a novel called The Correspondent by Virginia Evans, and I think it is an incredible book, very cleverly done. And just want to make sure that everybody has that on their possible August reading list. It's a good one. Bruce, thank you so much for being on Perino on Politics.